Hello and welcome to my podcast. Another frustrating, deflating day for you guys and for Washington. The Commanders lose 25-10 to the Cowboys. I am here with Nicki Jhabvala from the Washington Post. You can follow her on Twitter at
Nicki Jhabvala, NICKIJHABVALA.
And of course, you can read my work on ESPN.com. And don't forget about another, unfortunately for you guys, another Therapy Tuesday with Bram Weinstein and I, the voice of the Commanders, host on ESPN 630. That's Tuesday night, 7:30, live stream. We're going to dig deeper into some more questions and problems about what's going on here. Nicki, let's start there, big picture, because it's not just about another loss. This is 3 in a row now. Where is this team at? I mean, does not look good right now.
No, and I think the biggest concern to me is they're finding new ways to lose. Weeks 2 and 3 are similar pattern. The sacks, the play up front, just couldn't get the offense going. Here, they had some positive moments in the first half. They were able to establish a run game, which they needed to do. But then they have all these penalties. They can't get out of their own way. I mean, they had 2 of their own interceptions. And again, they talked about getting more takeaways. 2 of them were negated by penalties. 2 PI calls late. I mean, it's all their own doing that is causing these losses. And that's concerning.
Well, and the big thing to me, too, is they ran the ball well.
Right.
And this is what, before the game, I'm like, if you stop the run, you run the ball well, you have a really good chance to win. And they couldn't do it because of the penalties. What were there, like 11 penalties, I think it was. William Jackson had a few on defense. There was, Benjamin St-Juste had one that wiped out a turnover. But bigger picture, they're 1-3. Like, this is year 3 of Ron Rivera.
No, it doesn't bode well. It doesn't bode well. I mean, and we knew this coming in. You win this game, you can, placate all the questions, all the criticism for at least a little while. It buys you more time essentially. But you lose in the way you do, that just opens you up to more questions. And now it's reasonable to have these conversations about what is their future, what about the coaches, personnel changes, more like, this isn't working. This is 2.5 seasons in, basically, of it not working.
And Ron Rivera made a big point in the offseason to say, hey, it's year 3, time to take a jump. Mm-hmm. And I think as a reporter, and I think people always want us to bring the fire and brimstone. And I know, I know there's a lot of hell yeahs being said out there right now, but that's not always just our job. So as a reporter, how do you handle this? Because, yes, there's a lot of time left. I've seen teams turn around here before. You've seen teams like that too. Sure. So as a reporter, how do you handle a situation like this where it is year 3? They're 1-3. They are what they are, but yet when do people want pitchforks?
Right. No, and it is difficult. I mean, it's difficult on the players, the coaches, the media too. You run out of things to write about with all this. But I think the thing you always have to remember as you're having these conversations about, well, just make this change, get rid of this person, change that. All right, well, if you get rid of one person, who is going to fill that person's spot? You fire a coordinator. Who's going to take his spot? Is there anybody better on staff? Not that I see. I mean, who's going to call the plays if Scott Turner's gone? Who would call defense if Jack is gone? They don't even have the depth there to really compensate. And would it make a long-term real difference? Sometimes it doesn't always make sense. It's easier to point the blame on one person, but it doesn't always make sense.
Well, now that's what I think my point is too. In the media, and I don't want to make excuses for us because that's, your job is to hold people accountable and to do all that. But as a reporter, I'm not going to sit there and call for firings because that's not my role. That's more of a columnist role. Right. For you guys have columnists who can do that. But so how do you go about then making sure that you're getting across the accountability factor?
I mean, I think all we can do is keep asking questions and keep talking to players, keep talking to coaches. A lot of what they say in front of cameras isn't always truly how they feel. I mean, I think it's in some ways human nature. If you're put on the spot like that, you're gonna kind of give the really polished answers. But the more you're around them, you can see it in their body language too, the frustration that's building, seeing how they interact with players. There's a lot you can draw from during the week and just seeing where this team is at. Just in terms of their interactions and things that you can't always quantify.
So based on that, where do you think they're at?
I think they're in trouble. I think they're in trouble. I mean, you can see the frustrations mounting. It doesn't look like they quit on the field, but you can see players getting visibly tired and fatigued by the losing. And with reason. There's been a lot of turnover, a lot of quarterback changes, and a lot of the same results. So yeah, I think they're in trouble. I think this was a very critical game for them, and they needed to step up and didn't.
And you can see in John Allen, when you talk to John Allen, like you can always tell like he's about this close to wanting to break a chair in the locker room because he's that upset. And I think because here's a guy that came out of college that's used to winning, and it hasn't happened here yet. I mean, what else have you seen? Just even are there other players that have stood out to you like, wow, that body language? And to be clear, the frustration isn't always directed as a coach or this or that.
Yeah.
It's directed at losing.
Right. It's a circumstance. I mean, I think we've seen it in Terry McLaurin too, and he's always one who's never gonna, ask for more touches, even though every receiver would like to get the ball as much as possible. He wants the team to win, and he's remained positive and upbeat, but you can still see it in his face. He's sick of losing, and I think every player feels it. You get to this point, you work this hard. It's like, really, again? But you see it in the locker room after, guys just sitting at their locker room, just kind of staring, like, seriously, again? How does this happen? It takes a toll.
The players talk about having hope, and Sam Cosmi said the ship hasn't sunk yet.
Mm-hmm.
They have to have hope, because if they don't, there's 13 games left.
Yeah.
It is a colossal collapse if you don't have hope. Where do you think the hope really lies? And I mean, I know, again, it can change.
Right.
I get tired of saying it can change like that, because like with 13 games left, of course it can. Will it? Can it? That's the question is. And I think my concern today was because of how well they did run the ball, and they couldn't get to the receiver talent. That's what concerned me. And then, and also like the defensive breakdowns, and William Jackson, Kendall Fuller, they've got to play better at corner.
I think they need to make some adjustments. I mean, it's hard in season. You say you want different personnel in there. Well, who's on the bench, and if not them, who are you going to get that can immediately step in and contribute immediately and play well immediately? And there's not many out there. They wouldn't be out there if they could do it. So it's tough in season. But I think they got to make more adjustments. They got to keep trying new things to get out of this hole. And I think as soon as they get that first win, no matter how it looks, it'll start to chip away at this. I mean, you talk about how quickly the narrative have changed. I mean, in week 1, Scott Turner was an offensive genius, and this team was, on track, and they're dynamic, and they're brand new. And, the next game, they're,
next couple
fire everybody was the response,
It's been a shocking fall for this offense. And I think, again, that's what concerns me, is that run game works. And and I actually thought like there are parts of that game plan, like I get what they're trying to do. I get how they're trying to attack us. But then you watch it, like they were tripping a little bit more. The alignment was such where that widened the ends for Dallas and put them in a different position to rush and allowed them to chip more. So there was some of that. But then you watch the defensive backs, and they're just sitting on these routes because they know the ball's got to come out fast. And it goes back to the line, like, was that line built well enough in the offseason? And you have to look at it and say, and I know third center and all that, but.
Yeah, no, I think that offensive line is going to be, in hindsight, maybe one of the bigger regrets of this staff in building this team, because they did have a really good line last year. And that is in spite of injuries and the coronavirus and everything that came their way. I mean, they were on their 5th center at one point last year, and they still held up. Mm-hmm. And now this group is struggling no matter who's in there. I think Eric Flowers, he had a really good season last year. Losing him is tough. Obviously you lose a player like Brandon Scherff anytime, you're going to feel the void, but it's become a real problem. I mean, Sam Cosmi played well last year, is not playing well these last couple of weeks. You worry about the confidence of a young player there. So yeah, they don't have the starters, let alone the depth they need there to really make an impact. It's concerning.
It is. And then Carson Wentz, week 1 and half of week 2, you look like, hey, at least they've got this. Weeks 3 and 4, now you say you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they don't have an identity. I know this came up during the week. Mm-hmm. And Jahan Dotson said after the game, we're still finding ourselves. And I think it's going to be even harder after this game. They do have good rushers. They put up good production, 100 yards in the first half. They just weren't able to sustain it. I mean, Carson still had 42 attempts. Mm-hmm. So,
What's your, again, level of concern with him? Because again, a couple games I think we're getting the full experience from him. And I think, but it speaks to needing to protect him better. It starts with that.
Yeah.
He's got to make the good decisions, and he didn't do that all the time today. So what's your thoughts on him?
I'm more concerned about the line. To me, that's where it starts. Right. In protecting him. I mean, each game I'm like, oh my God, I don't, like, he's gonna be so sore going home. But it starts there. He needs more time behind the pocket. Yes, he needs to clean up mistakes and get the ball out quicker, but it starts there with the line. Until they can protect him, they're not going to go anywhere, be it with the pass game or the run game.
Right. And I think, Mike, again, going back to what we saw today, there are a couple of times like where Trayvon Diggs is sitting on a route, and he's just 8 yards off. All you off coverage people, he's 8 yards off, but he's sitting on the route. That's why you play that coverage,
right,
so you can sit and watch and drive. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking, okay, that's a great chance for a double move.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have time.
No, he has no time back there. And they've tried to find ways to get him more time, and it's unsustainable. I wish they had kind of stuck with the run a little bit more, even in the tougher times, but they get behind with the penalties, and then again you're playing catch up. So yeah, it's like they close one leak and another one springs. It's tough like that.
Defensively, I mean, I felt like they took a step last week, despite some of those big plays, but those big plays kill them. And then, so what did you see today?
I thought they were pretty good, especially in the early going. They let Ezekiel Elliott get away with that 31-yard catch and run. There was a missed tackle on that play, but then they come back and they have to stop on third down, stop them again on third down. So they, spared a couple touchdowns there and settled for field goals. But those mistakes, if it's not giving up big plays, it's creating your own big plays for the Cowboys with those penalties. I mean, those 2 PI calls were costly. And then you have the 30-yard touchdown where I think William Jackson said he thought he had help over the top and he wasn't quite there. But, it's just, again, it's them getting in their own way.
Last thing then, is this a confidence thing? Like, if this team gets that one win, do you think like it's one of those things where they feel like now you got it, or do you still look at it and say, I don't know how they're going to solve this?
I'm more on the I don't know part. Yeah. I think a win will alleviate it, let the air out a little bit. I mean, things are so tense right now. But I certainly don't think it'll solve things. I think we saw that in week 1, with how they played and then how they responded the following 3 weeks now. So I think there are some deep-rooted problems there, definitely, but you just hope they can make it through the season respectively.
I apologize. One more. Do you because again, it's year 3, and I do think it's early for going down certain roads. However, I know what fans are asking about Ron Rivera. Like, when do you see teams losing belief in a regime, right? Because it's not just on the coach, it's on the head coach, it's on everybody. And what, do you see, what kind of cracks you see there? Or do you think the frustration is more just with their own play?
I think right now it's more with their own play. It's more the execution than, the play calling necessarily. Not to say the play calling has by any means been perfect. They can make some adjustments there. I don't feel like, Ron Rivera has lost the team or anything like that. I think that's what you worry about if this continues. This is only week 4. If there are 2-3 more losses just like this, yeah, you got a real problem on your hands. Then people really are going to be pointing fingers. But I don't think we're there yet. Maybe it never comes to that. I think back to 2020 when they were really struggling there with changing quarterbacks, and then they have that good run, and it's, whole new game,
Right. And so, and each of the last 2 years, they've had runs at a certain point in the season, and last year injuries and COVID kind of took care of that momentum. Right. So that's where in his record in the second half is better. Yeah. So that's what he's going to cling on to. And I think he's going to show the players that these teams get better. That's where they're going to have to hold their hat, but it's got to start with a win.
Oh, absolutely. It's got to start with a win. They have to get one. And I think their confidence is going to take a hit until they get one. I mean, like anybody. But yeah, they have to get that second win soon. They hope,
All right. Well, that's it from Dallas. Thanks to Nikki Jhabvala for joining me. Thank you as always for tuning in. I know it's frustrating as hell, so I appreciate it. Again, I'll be back on Tuesday night, 7:30 Eastern time with Bram Weinstein, voice of the Commanders. Therapy Tuesday. That line should be long, but I also know the frustration level, and sometimes you want to skip therapy, but tune in anyway because I think you'll learn something. Thanks a lot, and I'll talk to you next time.